Malala Yousafzai, the brave girl who changed the world. Imagine being just 11 years old and writing a blog about your life under dangerous conditions. Imagine being shot for wanting to go to school and then becoming the youngest person ever to win the Nobel Peace Prize. This is the incredible true story of Malala Yousafzai, a brave girl from Pakistan who refused to be silenced. Malala believed that every girl in the world deserves the right to education, and she was willing to risk her life to fight for this belief. When the Taliban banned girls from going to school in her hometown, Malala spoke out against this injustice. Her courage inspired millions of people around the world and brought international attention to the importance of education for all children. Malala's story shows us that age is just a number when it comes to making a difference in the world. Her bravery and determination prove that even the youngest voices can change the course of history. Before we begin Malala's inspiring journey, please remember to subscribe to our channel, Beginner Bio Stories. We create simple English stories about famous people to help you learn English, while discovering the lives of courageous individuals who made our world better. Now, let's explore the amazing story of Malala Yousafzai, the girl who stood up for education and became a symbol of hope for children everywhere. Early life in the Swat Valley. Malala Yousafzai was born on July 12, 1997, in Mingora, the largest city in the Swat district of northwestern Pakistan. She was named after Malala of Maiwand, a famous female folk hero in Afghanistan who inspired Pashtun fighters against British forces in the 1880s. From birth, Malala was destined to carry on the tradition of courage and resistance that her name represented. Malala's father, Ziauddin Yousafzai, was an educator and activist who ran a chain of private schools in the region. He believed strongly in the power of education and in equal rights for girls and boys. Unlike many fathers in conservative Pakistani society, Ziauddin treated his daughter exactly the same as he would have treated a son. He encouraged Malala to speak her mind, ask questions, and pursue her dreams without limitations. Malala's mother, Torpekai Yousafzai, came from a traditional Pashtun family and had never learned to read or write. However, she supported her husband's progressive views on education and encouraged Malala's academic pursuits. Despite her own lack of formal education, Torpekai understood the importance of learning and wanted her daughter to have opportunities that she herself had never enjoyed. The Swat Valley, where Malala grew up, was known for its natural beauty, with mountains, rivers, and green valleys that attracted tourists from around the world. The region had a rich cultural history and was once part of the ancient Gandhara civilization. However, it was also a conservative area where traditional customs often limited the opportunities available to girls and women. Malala was the eldest of 3 children. She had 2 younger brothers, Kushal and Adil, whom she loved dearly despite their typical sibling rivalries. The family lived modestly but happily, and their home was always filled with discussions about education, politics, and social justice. From an early age, Malala was exposed to conversations about the importance of standing up for what is right. As a young child, Malala was bright, curious, and eager to learn. She attended her father's school, where she excelled in all her subjects and showed particular talent in speaking and writing. Her teachers recognized her intelligence and leadership abilities, often asking her to represent the school in competitions and public events. Malala loved learning and dreamed of becoming a doctor to help her people. The Pashtun culture that Malala was born into had both positive and challenging aspects. On one hand, Pashtuns valued honor, hospitality, and courage qualities that would serve Malala well in her future activism. On the other hand, traditional Pashtun society often restricted women's freedoms and limited their participation in public life. Malala's family was unusual in their progressive attitudes toward women's education and rights. From her earliest years, Malala's father treated her as an equal and encouraged her to express her opinions freely. This was unusual in their society, where girls were often taught to be quiet and obedient. Ziauddin would take Malala to school board meetings and encourage her to participate in discussions. He wanted her to develop confidence and leadership skills that would serve her throughout her life. Growing up under the Taliban's shadow. When Malala was about 10 years old, the situation in the Swat Valley began to change dramatically. A local Taliban group, led by Maulana Fazlullah, began to gain power in the region. The Taliban claimed to be fighting for Islamic values, but their interpretation of Islam was extreme and oppressive, particularly toward women and girls. The Taliban began by broadcasting radio messages that condemned modern education, especially for girls. They claimed that educating girls was against Islamic teachings, and that girls should stay at home and not participate in public life. These messages were broadcast from illegal radio stations and became very popular among some conservative members of the community. As the Taliban gained more influence, they began to take more aggressive actions against education and other activities they disapproved of. They banned music, television, and dancing. They ordered men to grow beards and women to cover themselves completely when in public. Most importantly for Malala and her family, they began to attack schools, particularly schools that educated girls. The Taliban's campaign against education was systematic and terrifying. They destroyed hundreds of schools, many of them girls' schools. They threatened teachers and students who continued to attend or work at educational institutions. The goal was to create fear and force people to comply with their extreme interpretation of religious law. Malala watched with horror as her beautiful valley was transformed by fear and extremism. Friends and neighbors began to change their behavior, afraid of attracting the Taliban's attention. Many families stopped sending their daughters to school, even though education had been highly valued in Swat Valley culture for generations. Despite the growing danger, Malala's father refused to close his schools. He believed that education was a fundamental right, and that giving in to the Taliban's demands would only make them stronger. However, he also had to be careful because the threats were real and dangerous. Several of his fellow educators had been killed or forced to flee the area. During this time, Malala began to understand that her comfortable childhood was coming to an end. She saw how fear was changing her community and making people give up things they valued. She watched as her female friends and classmates gradually stopped coming to school, either because their parents were afraid or because the Taliban had specifically targeted their families. The experience of living under the Taliban's growing influence had a profound impact on Malala's character and worldview. She began to understand that freedom and education were not guaranteed rights, but precious gifts that had to be protected and fought for. This realization would shape her future actions and inspire her to become an activist for girls' education. Despite the fear and uncertainty, Malala continued to attend school and speak out about the importance of education. Her father's courage and her own natural leadership abilities combined to make her a voice for those who were too afraid to speak. Even as a child, Malala understood that silence in the face of injustice was not an option. The BBC blog, A Young Voice Against Extremism. In late 2008, when Malala was just 11 years old, a BBC reporter contacted her father looking for someone to write a blog about life under Taliban rule in the Swat Valley. The BBC wanted to show the world what was happening to education in the region, but they needed someone who was actually experiencing the situation firsthand. Initially, the BBC approached a local school and asked for an adult teacher to write the blog. However, the teachers were too afraid of Taliban retaliation to agree to this dangerous assignment. The Taliban had made it clear that they would punish anyone who spoke out against them or tried to bring international attention to their activities. Ziauddin suggested that his daughter Malala could write the blog instead. Although she was very young, Malala was articulate, brave, and passionate about education. She understood the issues better than many adults and had the writing skills necessary to communicate effectively with an international audience. The BBC agreed to let Malala write the blog, but they insisted that she use a pseudonym to protect her identity. She chose the name Gul Makai, which means cornflower in Pashto. This precaution was necessary because writing the blog would be extremely dangerous if the Taliban discovered her real identity. Malala's blog posts were written in Urdu and translated into English by BBC staff. She wrote about her daily experiences under Taliban rule, describing how girls were being denied education and how fear was affecting her community. Her posts were simple but powerful, showing the world through the eyes of a young girl what it was like to live under extremist control. In her first blog post, published on January 3, 2009, Malala wrote about her fear of going to school and her sadness at seeing her friends stop attending classes. She described how the Taliban's radio broadcasts filled her with dread, and how the sound of helicopters overhead reminded everyone that their valley had become a war zone. Malala's blog posts quickly gained international attention. Readers around the world were moved by her courage and by the clear, simple way she described the injustices she was witnessing. Her writing brought human faces and emotions to a conflict that many people had only heard about in news reports. Writing the blog gave Malala confidence and helped her develop her voice as an activist. She began to understand that she had the power to communicate with people far beyond her own community, and that her words could make a difference. This experience would prove crucial in preparing her for her future role as an international advocate for education. The blog also put Malala in great danger, although she and her family did not fully realize this at the time. The Taliban monitored international media carefully and were always looking for people who were working against them. By writing the blog, even under a pseudonym, Malala was taking enormous risks. Despite the danger, Malala continued to write her blog posts throughout early 2009. Her entries documented the closing of her school, the fear that gripped her community, and her determination to continue learning despite the obstacles. These posts created a permanent record of what life was like under Taliban rule and helped the world understand why education rights were worth fighting for. Speaking out, from blogger to activist. As Malala's BBC blog gained international attention, she began to receive invitations to speak at public events and to journalists. Her father encouraged these activities because he believed that bringing international attention to the situation in Swat Valley was the best way to protect girls' education and resist Taliban oppression. In February 2009, when Malala was still only 11 years old, she gave her first public speech to a local press club. The speech was titled, "How Dare the Taliban Take Away My Basic Right to Education?" In this speech, Malala clearly articulated her belief that education was a fundamental human right that no one should be able to take away. The speech was filmed and distributed online, where it reached audiences far beyond Pakistan. People around the world were amazed to see such a young girl speaking so eloquently and bravely about human rights and education. Malala's natural charisma and sincere passion made her message even more powerful. As Malala's public profile grew, international journalists began to seek her out for interviews. She appeared in documentaries and news programs, always emphasizing the importance of education for all children, especially girls. Her youth and courage made her a compelling spokesperson for education rights. However, Malala's increasing visibility also made her more dangerous to the Taliban. Although she was still using the pseudonym Gul Mackay for her blog, her real identity was becoming widely known through her public speaking. The Taliban began to see her as a threat to their authority and ideology. In May 2009, The Pakistani military launched an operation to drive the Taliban out of the Swat Valley. Malala and her family, along with most other residents of the region, were forced to flee their homes and become refugees in their own country. They spent several weeks living in temporary camps before being allowed to return to their homes. When the family returned to Mingora after the military operation, they found that their home had been damaged but was still livable. More importantly, the schools were able to reopen, and girls could once again attend classes. This was a moment of great joy for Malala, who had missed her education terribly during the months when schools were closed. The return to normal life was wonderful, but it was also temporary. Although the military had driven out the main Taliban forces, many Taliban supporters remained in the area, and the threat of violence was still present. Malala and her family had to be careful about their activities and security. Despite the ongoing dangers, Malala continued her activism. She was invited to speak at conferences and events around Pakistan and internationally. She began to develop a clear message about the importance of education and the rights of all children to learn and grow. Her speaking skills improved rapidly, and she became increasingly confident in addressing large audiences. During this period, Malala also excelled in her regular schoolwork. She consistently ranked at the top of her class and participated in academic competitions. She was determined to prove that girls could achieve anything they set their minds to, and she wanted to set an example for other girls in her community. The attack that shocked the world. On October 9, 2012, Malala was 15 years old and attending Kushal Girls High School, which was run by her father. It was a normal school day, and Malala had just finished taking an exam in Pakistani studies. She was traveling home from school on the school bus with her friends and classmates, as she did every day. The school bus was crowded with girls chatting and laughing about their day. Malala was sitting near the back of the bus, talking with her friends about their exams and making plans for the afternoon. It was a typical scene that had been repeated hundreds of times before. Suddenly, the bus was stopped by armed men. One of the men climbed onto the bus and asked, "Who is Malala?" Most of the girls were too frightened to speak, but their faces inadvertently revealed who Malala was. The gunman immediately identified her and raised his pistol. The attacker fired 3 shots. One bullet hit Malala in the left side of her head, just above her left eye. The bullet traveled along her skull and went into her shoulder. 2 other girls on the bus, Kainat Rayas and Shazia Ramzan, were also wounded in the attack, but not as severely as Malala. The attack was planned and carried out by the Taliban as punishment for Malala's activism in favor of girls' education. The Taliban had issued threats against her before, but many people, including Malala herself, had not believed that they would actually attack a 15-year-old girl. The shooting proved how seriously the extremists took the threat posed by Malala's message of education and empowerment. After the shooting, Malala was unconscious and critically injured. She was first taken to a local hospital in Mingora, but the doctors there quickly realized that her injuries were too severe for them to treat. She was transferred to a military hospital in Peshawar, where neurosurgeons worked to save her life. The attack on Malala shocked Pakistan and the entire world. The image of a young girl being shot simply for wanting to go to school was so horrific that it sparked international outrage. People from all over the world expressed their support for Malala and condemned the Taliban's attack. Malala's condition remained critical for several days. The bullet had caused severe damage to her skull and brain, and doctors were not sure if she would survive. Her family and friends waited anxiously by her bedside, praying for her recovery and hoping that she would wake up. The Pakistani government, under intense international pressure, provided the best medical care available for Malala. However, it became clear that she would need specialized treatment that was not available in Pakistan. Arrangements were made to transfer her to a hospital in Birmingham, England, where she could receive the advanced medical care necessary to save her life. News of the attack spread rapidly around the world through social media and international news outlets. People everywhere were horrified that anyone would shoot a young girl for advocating for education. The attack became a symbol of the extreme lengths to which some groups would go to deny basic human rights to women and girls. Recovery and global support. Malala was airlifted to Queen Elizabeth Hospital in Birmingham, England, on October 15, 2012, just 6 days after the attack. She was still unconscious and in critical condition when she arrived. The medical team at the hospital, led by neurosurgeon Dr. Javed Kayani, worked around the clock to treat her injuries and help her recover. The medical treatment that Malala received in Birmingham was complex and extensive. Surgeons had to repair damage to her skull and facial nerves. She underwent multiple operations to reconstruct parts of her skull and to address complications from the bullet wound. The recovery process was long and difficult, requiring months of intensive medical care and rehabilitation. While Malala was fighting for her life in the hospital, an extraordinary wave of support emerged from around the world. People from every continent sent messages of support, prayers, and good wishes for her recovery. Schools, governments, and organizations issued statements condemning the attack and supporting Malala's mission of promoting education for all children. The attack had the opposite effect of what the Taliban intended. Instead of silencing Malala and discouraging other girls from seeking education, the shooting inspired millions of people to support her cause. "I Am Malala" became a rallying cry for education rights activists around the world. On October 16, 2012, exactly 1 week after the attack, Malala began to regain consciousness. Her first concerns were about her father's safety and whether she would be able to continue her education. These priorities showed that even after such a traumatic experience, Malala's commitment to family and learning remained her top priorities. Malala's recovery was remarkable, both medically and emotionally. Despite the severity of her injuries, she showed incredible strength and determination to get better. Her positive attitude and focus on the future impressed her doctors and nurses, who had rarely seen such resilience in someone so young. During her recovery, Malala received visitors from around the world, including politicians, celebrities, and fellow activists. Former British Prime Minister Gordon Brown visited her and later helped establish a global campaign for education rights. These visits helped Malala understand the international impact of her story and her potential to create positive change. The attack also brought Malala's family international attention and support. Her father continued his work as an education activist and became a spokesperson for his daughter during her recovery. Her mother and brothers also had to adjust to their new life in England and the global attention that came with being Malala's family. As Malala's physical condition improved, she began to think about how she could use her experience to help other children around the world. Rather than being discouraged by the attack, she became more determined than ever to fight for education rights. She understood that she had been given a second chance at life and wanted to use it to make a difference. The Taliban had hoped that attacking Malala would send a message to other girls and discourage them from seeking education. Instead, the attack created a global movement supporting girls' education and made Malala one of the most recognizable advocates for human rights in the world. The global advocate. After her recovery, Malala threw herself into advocacy work with renewed passion and determination. She understood that her survival had given her a unique platform to speak for millions of children around the world who were denied access to education. Rather than retreating from public life, she decided to use her experience to create positive change on a global scale. In July 2013, just 9 months after the attack, Malala addressed the United Nations General Assembly on her 16th birthday. This speech marked her return to public life and demonstrated her commitment to continuing her activism despite the dangers she had faced. The speech was watched by millions of people around the world and established Malala as a major international figure. In her UN speech, Malala said, "They thought that the bullets would silence us, but they failed." And out of that silence came thousands of voices. She emphasized that the attack had not weakened her resolve, but had made her more determined to fight for education rights. The speech was powerful, eloquent, and inspiring, showing that Malala had grown into a mature and sophisticated advocate. Following her UN address, Malala established the Malala Fund, a non-profit organization dedicated to ensuring that every girl has access to 12 years of free, safe, and quality education. The fund works in countries around the world where girls face barriers to education, providing resources and support to local organizations and communities. Malala also continued her own education, enrolling at Edgbaston High School for Girls in Birmingham. Despite her international fame and busy schedule of advocacy work, she remained committed to her studies and achieved excellent grades. She wanted to set an example for other girls and show that education should always be a priority. In 2014, when Malala was just 17 years old, she was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, making her the youngest person ever to receive this honor. She shared the prize with Kailash Satyarthi, an Indian activist who works to end child labor. The Nobel Committee recognized both activists for their work to protect children's rights and promote education. Malala's Nobel Peace Prize acceptance speech was delivered in Oslo, Norway, and watched by millions of people around the world. In her speech, she dedicated the award to all the voiceless children who want education and emphasized that the prize was not just for her, but for all children who are fighting for their rights. The Nobel Prize brought even more international attention to Malala's work and gave her additional credibility as a global advocate. She used this platform to meet with world leaders, speak at international conferences, and raise awareness about education issues in developing countries. Malala also became a prolific author, writing books about her experiences and her vision for global education. Her autobiography, I Am Malala, became an international bestseller and was translated into dozens of languages. The book helped readers around the world understand her story and the broader issues affecting girls' education globally. Throughout her advocacy work, Malala maintained her focus on practical solutions rather than just raising awareness. The Malala Fund invested in education projects in countries like Nigeria, Kenya, Lebanon, and Pakistan, working with local partners to create lasting change in communities where girls faced barriers to schooling, continuing education, and future dreams. Despite her international fame and busy advocacy schedule, Malala remained committed to her own education. She understood that she could not effectively advocate for other children's education if she did not continue learning herself. This commitment to personal growth and academic achievement became an important part of her message to young people around the world. After completing her secondary education at Edgbaston High School in Birmingham, Malala applied to several prestigious universities. In August 2017, she received the excellent news that she had been accepted to study at Oxford University, one of the most respected institutions of higher learning in the world. Malala's acceptance to Oxford was particularly meaningful because it represented the fulfillment of dreams that had almost been destroyed by the Taliban attack. When she was lying in the hospital, recovering from her injuries, many people wondered if she would ever be able to return to normal life, let alone achieve academic success at the highest level. At Oxford, Malala studied philosophy, politics, and economics, PPE, a program that combines 3 subjects crucial for understanding how to create positive change in the world. The program was perfect for someone like Malala, who wanted to understand both the theoretical foundations of social justice and the practical mechanisms for creating policy change. During her time at Oxford, Malala tried to balance her student life with her continuing advocacy work. She attended lectures, wrote essays, and participated in student activities like any other undergraduate. However, she also continued to travel around the world, speaking at conferences and working with the Malala Fund to expand access to education. Malala's experience as a university student was important for her personal development and for her credibility as an education advocate. By pursuing higher education herself, she demonstrated that girls from any background could achieve academic success if given the opportunity. Her presence at Oxford also inspired other young women from developing countries to pursue their educational dreams. Throughout her university years, Malala continued to expand the reach and impact of the Malala Fund. The organization grew from a small initiative to a major international nonprofit with programs in multiple countries. The fund focused on practical interventions that could make immediate differences in girls' lives, such as providing school supplies, training teachers, and advocating for policy changes. Malala also used her time at university to develop her understanding of global issues beyond education. She studied economic development, political systems, and social justice movements around the world. This broader knowledge helped her become a more effective advocate and prepared her for future leadership roles. In June 2020, Malala graduated from Oxford University with a bachelor's degree in philosophy, politics, and economics. Her graduation was a moment of great pride for her family and supporters around the world. It represented the successful completion of an educational journey that had been interrupted by violence, but ultimately triumphed through determination and support. Malala's graduation from Oxford marked the end of one chapter in her life and the beginning of another. With her formal education complete, she was ready to dedicate even more time and energy to her advocacy work and to take on new challenges in the fight for global education rights. Impact and recognition. Malala's work as an education advocate has had a profound impact on policies and attitudes around the world. Her story has inspired millions of people to support education rights and has brought international attention to the challenges facing girls in many developing countries. The combination of her personal experience, articulate communication skills, and unwavering commitment has made her one of the most effective advocates of her generation. The Malala Fund has directly impacted the lives of thousands of girls around the world. The organization has funded education programs in countries where girls face significant barriers to schooling, including Afghanistan, Brazil, India, Lebanon, Nigeria, Pakistan, and Turkey. These programs have helped girls stay in school, provided teacher training, and advocated for policy changes that benefit all children. Beyond her direct programmatic work, Malala has influenced global education policy through her advocacy with world leaders and international organizations. She has met with presidents, prime ministers, and heads of international agencies, consistently pressing them to prioritize education in their policies and budgets. Her youth and personal story give her a unique ability to capture attention and inspire action. Malala's impact extends beyond education policy to broader conversations about women's rights and youth empowerment. Her story demonstrates that young people can be effective advocates for change, and that survivors of violence can become powerful voices for justice. She has inspired countless other young activists around the world to speak out on issues they care about. The recognition that Malala has received reflects the global impact of her work. In addition to the Nobel Peace Prize, she has received numerous other honors, including honorary doctorates from universities around the world, human rights awards, and recognition from governments and international organizations. These honors acknowledge both her personal courage and her effectiveness as an advocate. Malala's story has been told through multiple media formats, including books, documentaries, and films. These productions have helped spread her message to even broader audiences and have educated people about the challenges facing girls' education globally. The widespread media coverage has also helped sustain international attention on education issues. Perhaps most importantly, Malala has shown that individual actions can have global consequences. Her decision to speak out about girls' education, despite the personal risks, has created a movement that continues to grow and expand. She has demonstrated that courage and determination can overcome even the most serious obstacles. Malala's work has also highlighted the importance of family and community support in nurturing young leaders. Her father's progressive attitudes and her family's willingness to support her activism, even when it put them in danger, show how crucial supportive environments are for developing young advocates. The long-term impact of Malala's work will likely be measured not just in the specific programs and policies she has influenced, but in the inspiration she has provided to countless other young people to become advocates for the causes they believe in. Her example shows that age is not a barrier to creating meaningful change in the world. A voice for the future. Today, Malala Yousafzai continues to be one of the world's most prominent advocates for education and human rights. At a young age, she has already achieved more than most people accomplish in a lifetime, but she shows no signs of slowing down. Her vision extends far beyond her personal experiences to encompass global change and justice for all children. Malala's current work focuses on addressing the global education crisis, which has been made worse by conflicts, poverty, and most recently, the COVID-19 pandemic. She advocates for increased funding for education, better policies to support girls' schooling, and international cooperation to ensure that every child has access to quality education. Her message remains consistent. Education is a fundamental human right that should be available to all children, regardless of their gender, race, religion, or economic status. The Malala Fund continues to expand its reach and impact, working with local partners in countries around the world to address specific barriers that prevent girls from attending school. The organization takes a holistic approach, addressing not just access to schools, but also the quality of education, safety issues, and cultural barriers that may prevent girls from completing their education. Malala also uses her platform to address other global issues that affect young people, including climate change, refugee rights, and economic inequality. She understands that education is connected to all of these issues, and that creating a better world requires addressing multiple interconnected challenges. Her voice carries weight in international forums, where decisions are made about global policies and priorities. As Malala has matured from a teenager into a young adult, her communication style and approach to advocacy have evolved as well. She has become more sophisticated in her understanding of political and economic systems, while maintaining the passion and moral clarity that first made her voice so powerful. This combination of experience and conviction makes her an even more effective advocate. Malala's personal story continues to inspire people around the world, but she consistently emphasizes that change requires collective action rather than individual heroism. She encourages other young people to find their own voices and to speak out on issues they care about. Her message is that everyone has the power to make a difference, regardless of their age or circumstances. Looking to the future, Malala has expressed interest in eventually returning to Pakistan and continuing her work there. Though she acknowledges that security concerns make this challenging, she remains deeply connected to her home country and culture, and she wants to contribute directly to positive changes in Pakistan and other developing countries. Malala's legacy is still being written, but it is already clear that she has fundamentally changed global conversations about education, women's rights, and youth empowerment. Her story shows that courage and determination can overcome even the most serious obstacles, and that individual actions can have far-reaching consequences for positive change. The girl who was once shot for wanting to go to school has become a global symbol of the power of education and the importance of standing up for human rights. Malala Yousafzai's journey from a schoolgirl in Pakistan to a Nobel Prize winner, an international advocate, demonstrates that no dream is too big and no voice is too young to change the world. Her message remains as relevant today as it was when she first started speaking out. Every child deserves the opportunity to learn, grow, and contribute to their community. Through her continued advocacy and the ongoing work of the Malala Fund, she is helping to make this vision a reality for children around the world. Malala Yousafzai's story reminds us that the fight for education and human rights is ongoing, and that each generation must take up the cause in their own way. Her courage in the face of adversity and her unwavering commitment to justice serve as an inspiration for all of us to speak out against injustice and work for a better world. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the remarkable life of Malala Yousafzai. Her story shows us that no matter how young we are or how difficult our circumstances, we all have the power to make a positive difference in the world. We hope Malala's courage and determination inspire you to pursue your own dreams and to stand up for what you believe is right. If you found Malala's story inspiring, please subscribe to Beginner Bio Stories. We create simple English biographies to help you learn while discovering the lives of brave individuals who changed our world for the better. Like this video and share it with friends who are learning English. Thank you for learning with us, and we will see you in our next biographical journey.